Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our conversation on AI versus hiring velocity. As we get started this morning, let us know where you're streaming from. And if you have questions throughout our conversation, put them in the chat and we'll have some time to answer any questions that come through later. I'm Ryan Mann, Solution Marketing Director for Lean Solutions Group, and today I'm joined by Shahid Shah, fractional CTO, TED Talk alum, and expert in North America's most regulated technology environments like government and healthcare. Shahid, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Let's dive in. Shahid, what's really going on when it comes to the relationship between AI and tech talent in tech organizations today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because if you just look at it from the outside, I work as a fractional CTO. What that basically means is that there are lots of companies that need senior technology leadership, but not full time. So I often help them out and move things around. And what that means is I get to see 5, 10, 15, 20 projects at the same time with dozens of people on those projects. And everybody's struggling in pretty much the same way. And that is, the thing that looks easy about AI on the outside is exactly what makes it hard. And that is deceptively simple. And so what's happening is that your bosses go out, they see a demo, they watch a video, there's a vibe coder who throws together an app in an hour and pretends like it's gone to production and it's making millions of dollars. So there's a lot of tomfoolery going on. There's a little bit of hype, of course, going on. But what that's doing is it's impacting our staff directly because then they're confused. And what they don't want to do is to sound or look foolish. And so they reserve themselves and say, they don't just raise their hand and say, guys, you don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Those people out there don't know what they're doing. We're all in the same boat. We don't know what we're all doing. But so we've got to come together and move forward. So that's why I love this conversation today, is that we're going to talk about all those things where the tomfoolery we need to get over that so we can get back to real work.
Yeah, so it sounds like you get to have this 10,000-foot view of the problem across many organizations, similar to us, where we work with over 600 customers in transportation, logistics, technology, and CX. What do employers and employees need to know about the problems that are arising from implementation of these new technologies?
Yeah, the very first thing we should have leaders do is try never to push an AI tool that you've never used yourself. So I'm an experienced chief technology officer. I've been coding for a long time. I don't need to code today in order to know what's going on, to have general discussions. But if I'm going to say, hey, use Cursor versus Lovable, if I generally know what Cursor is, but I've never used it, or if I generally know what Lovable is, but never used it, how could I possibly tell my staff or our colleagues how to use those tools? So leaders are struggling at the moment as well because they're a little confused. They're trying to push AI tools without knowing it themselves. And then the staff, they're hesitant to admit their own confusion. So being fast with AI, it really requires understanding the tools where they sit today, not where they might be a month from now or 6 months from now. So what we've got to get to leaders to do is understand your tools first before you push them.
Yeah. So how is this? I know we've talked about software developers. I know software engineers in general are kind of the focus of, this AI implementation, these AI tools in terms of technology and product teams. But how is this affecting every role within a product org?
It's drastically affecting them. So it's such a beautiful question because we often believe that the software development lifecycle focuses on the software part. And it's not really. The software development lifecycle focuses on the humans that produce software. So anybody who's got a sophisticated SDLC understands they have requirements. Those requirements go to design. Design is understood to be how you do software in a user acceptable way. Then you move towards actual implementation. The architects get involved, the coders get involved, but then really, really important things happen, which is the product team is there, the customer success team is there, the QA team is there, the DevOps team is there. And so there's a lot of discussion online about how great a lot of these tools are for developers who are doing vibe coding, et cetera. But that's not the reality of most implementations in the enterprise sector where you and I sit all the time. I mean, you guys see hundreds of companies, I see dozens. And what we're seeing is everybody has to be an IC now. What does that mean? IC just stands for individual contributor. And typically you think of as a coder is an individual contributor. Maybe a QA person writing code is a contributor, but we never think about the DevOps guy as a contributor. We don't think about the test lead as the contributor. We don't think about the product guy who's writing the requirements as a contributor. Every single role now in the software development lifecycle is an individual contributor. And every role has its own set of prompts, tools, etc. So design has its own set of tools. Engineering has its own set of tools. DevOps has its own set of tools. And in fact, what we're seeing is that even if you can get your code done pretty quickly, which is now easy to see, all the reliability questions. I mean, if you're deploying to government or Department of Defense or healthcare, you can't just say, oh, I produced the AI. Yeah, it's got to be reliable. It's got to be safe. It's got to be tested. So there is absolutely zero reduction in actual human beings that need to do all this work. So there's this question of should we slow down hiring, et cetera? No, you just got to differentiate your hiring and say, okay, I'm hiring these new kinds of people rather than the old kinds of people. But it's really a struggle because we often believe software development lifecycle talks about software engineering, and they're just a small, very important part of the entire team.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing about this in the software lifecycle is you've said QA shifts left. What used to be done a few weeks after a certain stage is now being done just days after a certain stage. And really, every role is impacted because people are being asked to do more, faster, and cheaper. So, how do we address these issues around tool literacy, misalignment of expectations, and demand for talent that can actually be successful in this new world?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful point because the expectations engineering, like we've never had this idea that there is this thing called an expectations engineer. Now, what does that mean? I don't want to just invent a term for no reason, but the expectations engineer is super important in AI because most of what we produce in AI comes from what is referred to as context engineering. So what I've been recommending everybody, if you're building a chatbot, if you're building a large language model based conversational utility of any kind, what you want to do is to shift everyone left and just assume, for example, that the time when the product guy finishes the definition of his chatbot, his or her chatbot, right immediately after that, the QA people get involved and they start building their user acceptance tests. That sounds very weird. Normally you do your user acceptance testing way, like maybe in the middle of the development lifecycle or towards the end when you're doing your QA. But here, you should just assume that the artifacts that you need, the code, the test cases, the infrastructure as code, YAML files, etc., those are going to be produced by AI, and the AI will do a good job. What is not going to be produced by AI is, what the heck are we expecting? So the product people, project management, portfolio management teams should start working with the QA teams as early as possible to lay out and structure the user acceptance test using AI to generate the test cases, understand what the final conversations are going to be, how do you load the synthetic data, where do you get test data from? And so we say shift everyone left, not because everything should be done in parallel, but because the assumption is that if you know what to ask for in precise, specifiable ways, then the AI will be able to give you the artifacts for each of your roles. But now everybody is working together knowing that they're using AI as a colleague. And this is one very, very important part of this conversation is if you treat AI like you did your old world SaaS tools, AI is not to be treated like you treat Jira or Git. These are core tools that you must use in order to document what you do, describe what you do, but it doesn't invent for you, right? Git doesn't invent your code for you. Jira doesn't invent your requirements for you yet anyway. I'm sure the Atlassian guys are working on that. But if you look at these project management tools and the tools that we use for knowledge management, that is very different than this tool that we have created that can help us invent. So by shifting left, everybody starts to focus on the end user, and that's where things should start.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of macro changes here, but even in the micro, in that evolution of how jobs are changing, how roles are changing, like you said, everyone has to become an individual contributor. What is this doing to, talent pipelines? We talk about talent velocity, which is, the efficiency of acquisition, onboarding, and productivity of your technology teams and talent. Um, and then how do leaders need to, take charge here? What accountability do they need to have?
Yeah, so talent acquisition is arguably even more important today, more so than it was in the past, because in the past, your individuals, if they were, let's say, a bad coder or the QA guy didn't really know how to write test cases, in an old world, you could take multiple people and cover up that work because uh, people who create bad code are actually not that productive in creating code. People who create bad test cases or bad product requirements, they're not that productive. They don't generate quickly. But just imagine now, I'm a horrible engineer for sake of argument. Whatever you give me, I'm going to go put into the AI and it's going to generate something, code, test cases, et cetera, et cetera. So if I'm a horrible guy, I don't know how to code, I'm going to still create an enormous amount of slop that somebody else then has to work on downstream. That's why it's super, super
Yeah.
important. Get the right guys early because you may still need 5 people, but those 5 are going to be highly productive because one of those 5 isn't creating slop that the other 4 have to go clean up at.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the old adage of garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
And then now we have a lot of rework happening after that. Let's bring up our first slide so that we can kind of summarize what we talked about so far. We're talking about context and tension between AI and talent velocity. Anything to add here, Shahid?
Yeah, the main thing to think about here is that problems are going to fall more on leadership to come up with approaches that they feel that they can do collaboration with their colleagues on. So the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing, and Ryan, you probably see the same thing, is when you have a leader that their life is not changing at all, right? They don't use AI, they're not changing their models, et cetera. But then they say to all of their subordinates or colleagues, you guys use AI. That is not going to work, right? It can work from the bottom up, but the top guys and the folks who are the individual contributors, they have to work together with the leaders, setting and understanding the expectation in the sense that you're going to get code faster. You're going to get
Mhm.
test cases faster. You're going to get DevOps infrastructure as code faster. Things will come out faster, but it doesn't mean it will be reliable, that it will be safe, that it will immediately be applicable to your customers. So here's what in the old days, if you had slow productivity teams, Ryan, they would be producing slowly. And so the leader could react slowly. But if you tell everybody to use tools on Monday, on Friday, you will have hundreds of thousands of lines of code and
Hmm.
all the related artifacts. What the heck are you going to do with hundreds of thousands of lines of code? If you have no idea if your SDLC is not in good shape today and you don't have those personnel, that's where you really want to work on, is to say, okay, we're going to establish our SDLC with AI, and then we're going to go build our talent acquisition teams, get the talent who can fit in that AI driven culture, rather than go hire a bunch of people. You're not sure how they're going to be able to act or react, but you tell them to go use AI, right? That's going to be the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah. Thanks for that. You can take that slide down. Um, when we talk about talent, we talk about talent pipelines, talent velocity, productivity. Where are organizations feeling that pain first? Is it in talent acquisition where they can't find people with the right skills? Is it in onboarding, where now we have a lot of tools that you have to know how to use and we want you to use, but we don't really have a process driven way to use them? Or is it in retention? Are people, churning and burning out here?
Yeah, the churning and burning out actually has diminished quite a bit ever since the pandemic ended, and people are seeing layoffs and other things in the industry at large. So there is a good amount of stability and retention when leadership is able to focus on 2 things. One is being clear: is AI a tool on the side, Or is AI your colleague? Like it's one of you on the team. Once you make that decision and you say, well, no, it's not a tool on the side, it is a colleague. Well, that AI colleague has to be onboarded as if that AI colleague was a human, right? So let's say you work at a manufacturing facility as an IT or a software engineer. Well, when you go in, often you are told, what does the company do? How do they work? You get introduced to everybody. We do all of that with our human colleagues because we respect the colleagues. It's a good thing to do. And onboarding for humans is actually in better shape than it has ever been. However, if the AI is a colleague, it must be onboarded. So you have to explain to the AI colleague before you get your other colleagues to work with them, what is our company about? What is all of the context that goes into understanding our company? What does it do? How does it make money? Where are its biggest problems with customers? And this is a major lack in a lot of leadership today is they're bringing on the tools, but they're not training the AI with the context of the company, which means that the code that then the human colleagues along with the AI create are out of context, right? Because it's like you said, the garbage in, garbage out always means you could provide great context and get small amounts of great output, or you could give poor context and get large amounts of garbage. So it's what's funny here is that it's not just a matter of one piece of garbage coming in is one piece of garbage coming out. It's one piece of garbage coming in with 1,000 pieces of garbage coming out. And that's what kills you in AI.
It's everybody's favorite word right now, scalability. Scalability of garbage.
That's right.
So to me, what it sounds like is, and I love that perspective shift, right? AI in the technology environment today really should be viewed more as a colleague rather than, a typical SaaS tool that you might use. And I think it sort of touches on something that you've spoken about before, which is AI is a tech debt generator. Can you touch on that for a little bit?
Sure. And we've kind of mentioned it a bit is that you have a little bit of input and it creates a lot of output. And so what is tech debt? Tech debt are things where we've made maybe improper decisions, maybe untimely decisions, decisions too early before we knew the requirements. And so when humans create tech debt, we do so at the human scale. We might create 1,000 lines of tech debt per human per month, just as an example. However, even the worst engineer in the world can still write English into a chat, into Cursor or a Copilot or whatever. Even the worst engineer in the world is going to get thousands of lines of code out. And the worst engineer in the world will believe that that code is actually valuable. So the higher up you go in QA or product or design or development or DevOps, the higher up you go, the more they recognize tech debt versus not. But the younger you are, the less experienced you are, there's no way for you to know that what you just generated was an enormous amount of tech debt, which means it's very likely that the vast majority of what you're going to get is tech debt. So that's why I like to say AI is our world's best tech debt generator. Now, the question is tech debt bad in that case? Maybe not. Like if you can generate the tech debt in a week and then pay it back the rest of the month, no problem. But if you generated the tech debt in a week and are going to live with it for 6 years, you've got a problem, right? And so that problem, that shift now has to be that, we used to care. Like I'm an old school engineer, everything from assembler to C, C++, Pascal, all the way to Java, etc. And I, as an architect, often tell my developers, make sure you architect for maintenance. Make sure that when you write code, you write it so that it's easy for it to read for the next guy. And so on and so on. Don't copy paste code. Be dry in your code. All of this stuff that every decent engineer would do. Most of that is not relevant anymore, right? Because if you write the code, let's say there are some shops where I've helped them basically say the only code that we're going to put in generated by AI will also have to be maintained by AI. Like this is one very important thing that you can take to your immediate projects, which is if your boss tells you use AI to generate code or test cases or whatever the artifact is, but then you as the human have to maintain it, you've got a big problem, right? There's a dichotomy here because it can generate 10,000 lines, but you can only manage 1,000 lines, right? Just as an example. But what you should say is, okay, we're going to let the AI generate it, but then we have to use prompts spec kits, etc., in which the output is then maintained through AI as well. Now, so then it's not a tech debt generator. Now it's a solution generator. Like you've got a solution and your maintenance and your development were in the same pathway with the AI. But the big mistake people are making is you say, okay, I'm generating my code with the AI, say it's in healthcare or some patient-facing tool or a medical device of some sort, but then humans have to review and validate it. Well, you've got some problems then.
Yeah. And I think that kind of leads into, AI being layered in on top of old systems or processes, the old way of doing things. What impact is this having on the developer experience?
Yeah, the developer experience is shifting quite a bit. There are some shops in which the developers are being given time to live and stay in AI. In other shops, I mean, the real world is there's a lot of software that has to be maintained, whether it's at a bank or at a train company, whatever you are, you're a railroad shop or a manufacturing, you've got hard stuff that has been around for years. Now, the good news is that there are groups now that see that COBOL may be better maintained by AI if we teach it the right way. Old style C or assembler may be better to be maintained by AI if you can set up the context properly. So in a world in which you have the old and the new, you're better off trying out your AI, of course, in a greenfield application. Give your experiments, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? The greenfield is not where the most huge benefits are. The huge benefits are figuring out a way how to get your old code to be maintained better, faster, cheaper, so that when that last COBOL guy in your office retires, or you've got a whole bunch of Java there today, but you can't find the Java engineers fast enough. Like, Ryan, you guys are so good at being able to take a requirement and find like 9 great people for that requirement, but not every company has that capability. So if you can't find the right people, then maybe you take the 1 or 2 great people that you have. Their job is to really teach and build the context of your company and that software so that the maintenance effort becomes diminished over time. And a brand new guy coming in to your organization could use the AI to help you with maintenance. I'm not seeing that quite a bit yet. And that's primarily because the teams that are currently successful online are using this in greenfield, right, for chatbots and other things. But that's probably not the best place for it to be used in large enterprises that have lots of existing code.
And I think leaders are struggling a little bit with not knowing the future. So it's kind of like the blind leading the blind. How is this new world sort of reshaping the issue of talent acquisition? You've brought it up a few times. And I think the shifting skill mix and AI is being used by job seekers everywhere. How are teams going to find real skills that they need and not just the best prompt engineer?
Yeah. And so first, that level of confusion is rampant. So when somebody comes and tells you, like, there are a lot of consultants out there, talking heads like me who are doing a little bit of work and then going on video and then talking about it as if everybody can do this everywhere. Like, that is not true. So confusion is rampant, and it's okay. Nobody knows what they're doing at the level of expertise that they're pretending to know on the outside. So what do we need to do? We have to adjust our interview process, our sourcing process, so that we get an understanding of, all right, let's say, for example, that you're a designer today. So in the old days, I would have asked you, do you know HTML? Do you know CSS? I might give you a leak code or some kind of test to ask you, okay, do a little JavaScript, do a little bit of CSS, do a little of HTML. But now I really need to have you understand. So if I'm interviewing you, I might say, hey, Ryan, here's what I'm trying to build. Can you write for me the prompts that would be necessary in order to produce this output? We have 5 minutes. Ask me whatever questions you want. And then I want to see us build the prompts together. Now, if this candidate says that they have been working on AI for a while, that they know these tools, he or she should be able to immediately say, hey, Ryan, is it okay if I use Cursor versus VS Code? Would you like me to use Lovable? What would you like for me to use, right? So that starts to tell you, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. Then as the interview continues, you say, all right, now we're working on the prompt. Start writing the prompt. Now, the guys who have not done AI long will literally start writing the prompt instead of asking you to summarize your prompt, giving that to the AI and telling it to generate the prompt for you to prepare the specification. Now, this is all trainable. Everything that I'm talking about now, and this is what I often do as in my help when I provide at the CTO level, is how do you, since everybody's an IC, everyone, I've written up about this as well. So if anybody's interested, I can share with you guys the links. How does everybody who's an IC, what is a CEO prompt versus what is a COO prompt versus a CTO versus a product lead versus a developer? And that part there, if we start to shift that slightly and understand that the prompting process, everybody's a prompt engineer, which means nobody's a prompt engineer. It's like saying we're language engineers because we know how to speak.
Yeah.
No, we're just people who speak as a way of communicating. And that's what prompting is. But the way that you do prompting at each IC level is slightly different. And the tools you use for the AI are quite different. The things that they produce, whether who's going to maintain them or not, are quite different. So it can be done. It is difficult. Everybody's confused, and that confusion is perfectly okay. But what's most important is that it is solvable if you start to train the onboarding side of this with your AI colleague, because that's most important at this point.
Yeah. So every individual contributor needs to, and hiring teams need to understand each individual contributor's role, how AI partners with them in that role, so that they can understand really what kind of skills to vet for. We're a strategic global talent provider, and we have 10,000 employees over 5 countries. We are believers in AI. We built our own AI tools to source, shortlist, and improve speed for customers. And we're certainly, not the only talent acquisition teams using this kind of technology. Our developers and engineers are using this technology, or are not the only engineers using this technology. But is AI making this sort of funnel of talent acquisition, onboarding, and productivity more effective, or is it just speeding up a broken process?
At the moment, it's probably more speeding up a broken process, primarily because we're still trying to staff for our old SDLC, because nobody has caught up and written about and documented what the new AI first or AI native SDLC looks like. So it may not even be a SDLC anymore, right? It may be a product development lifecycle or a project development lifecycle, because the software part, as weird as it seems for especially a software guy like me to be able to say, is software is not important in the same way that it was 5 years ago from a developer perspective. The developer is still very important. They're going to be creating lots and lots of software, but the more important part is the engineering of the expectations, understanding the QA, understanding the UAT. So it's a broken process primarily right now in majority of companies, but a few companies have adjusted their SDLC or their life cycles for development in general to understand that an AI first or an AI native is a different way of hiring than your traditional. I mean, if you've got traditional software, you're not using AI anywhere in there, no need to change any of that. Just do it for the AI native, AI first ones.
Awesome. Let's bring up slide 2, sort of recap what we've talked about so far in the second half here. I think talent velocity is a good framework. We're thinking about acquisition, we're thinking about onboarding, we're thinking about productivity, and how AI sort of embeds itself in each of these stages. What to look for, what to avoid. Anything to add here, Shahid?
Yeah, just that one line that anyone who says that they know what they're doing because they've seen it somewhere else and that's why you should do it doesn't understand context. So in an AI native, AI first world, you don't say that I saw 5 other companies doing this and therefore you should do it. What you're supposed to do is you give the AI the context of your company. And we can talk about in future webinars and videos what does that look like to teach the AI about your company? And then when you say, okay, I've now developed 3 different business units. Business unit A is going to stick with maintenance long-term. They're not using AI. We're well-staffed there, no problem. But business units 1 and 2 will be using partial AI. And in those environments, you need to adjust how you hire and how you test for that hiring by using the AI to help you generate the interview questions. Use the AI to help you figure out what should your development lifecycle look like. So it's really fun to watch engineers who say that they know that they know AI well. They don't sit there and ask the AI to check them in their head about their process. So if I say my process, my SDLC is good, that's a horrible statement, right? You have to say my process for Ryan's business unit is good because I've taught the AI, we've put in all the work, we've done the strategy development, et cetera, for Ryan's business unit. And then when you go to the next business unit, you got to do that again. Otherwise, you are not AI native. You are not AI first. You're creating a little bit of slop. You're saying, oh, this worked in business unit A, so we're going to put it in B. Or it worked at company A, and then I'm going to use it at company B. You don't understand context then. And context is what the most powerful thing about AI is. If you get the context right, you'll get very, very hyper-specific development life cycles that are very matched to your abilities, your capabilities, et cetera.
Yeah, so it becomes sort of specialized, tailored. We need more tailored solutions. And I think that sort of touches on, the difference between the SaaS model of technology versus AI, which really should become, as I don't know, people are talking about projected to become vertical AI. So really kind of top to bottom through the organization, embedded into workflows and processes. So in that context, what hard skills won't be outdated in the next 12 months? I mean, it just sounds like AI can do it all. But what are great teams doing differently?
Yeah, so the one thing that all great teams are doing that is common, and that is they treat the hard skills about engineering, whether that's design in Figma, or if it's C and C++ and Java. Those hard skills are not going anywhere anytime soon in enterprise-friendly, business-friendly environments for one reason and one reason only, and that is no AI code should go out to production unchecked. Okay. Now, if we believe that statement, what does checked mean? It means reliability checking, safety checking, security checking, all the ilities that you would see in DevOps. All of that checking still needs to happen. Now, unless you've got a native AI bot that can do all that checking, who's going to do it? It's going to be you and me, right? We have to be the ones that are checking. Now, if we are checking the AI, well, that begs the question, what skills do I have that I can check C code? Well, I got to know how to write C. I can't get a junior guy to go check advanced C. I can't get a junior guy who doesn't know HTML or JavaScript to go check the Figma output. So it seems pretty obvious when we say it this way, but there are a lot of people saying, well, AI is going to generate all of this. Why do I need all these other people? Well, because in a world in which a line of code could kill someone, in a environment where a line of code could spend $1 million instead of one, in a line of code which has a payment gateway not working, no one is going to take your AI seriously if you're just going to say, oh yeah, my AI can work. You could press the button and it's going to go straight to production. Any leader who says that that's okay should be fired today, right? They should not be in that job. And that's what I mean is that, so as you adjust this idea that the artifact may be created. So imagine that the AI is a team of the world's smartest interns, and they can create enormous amounts of code, artifacts, DevOps, et cetera. Are you going to let all of that code go out? No, of course not, right? You're going to check it. And that's the piece where the same exact hard skills are there. One new hard skill, though, is how well can I translate what I'm getting from humans in the real world, convert that into a set of contextful prompts that I can teach AI with. Now, this is like if you're a parent, you know how to talk to children, right? A 2-year-old versus a 5-year-old versus a 7-year-old versus an 18-year-old, you know how to talk to children. And you know that you can't say something to an 18-year-old the same way that you see it say to a 2-year-old and vice versa. Well, that's how LLMs are. So you have to have this skill to know that the LLM is a 2-year-old, but it is literally a 2-year-old with the highest IQ that can answer any question that you can. But if you ask the 2-year-old to write a story, it's going to write you a story. You have the 2-year-old to do a little crayon, it'll do a little crayon. And that's really what we're seeing, is that the hard skills, try not to change those at all. In fact, ask for more capabilities and say, I want to see what brain coding, not vibe coding, what brain coding have you done? What, show me on LinkedIn, on GitHub, where your code is. But then ask them, how do you talk to a 2-year-old LLM, a 3-year-old LLM, in a way that would describe a complex business problem in the context of your company? That is a new hard skill that we don't know how to interview for.
So one last question before we answer some questions from the comments. How do companies keep people engaged and growing in this environment?
Yeah, the best way to engage them is to let them know that you have a very forgiving, experiment-friendly environment. So if you're doing maintenance on bank software or doing maintenance on a medical device, the things that I see like regularly, it's okay to tell them that, yeah, you should experiment with this. And it's okay to generate slop code, bad code, etc. It's okay that it will take twice as long to do something than it did before because you're experimenting with AI. The problem is that on video, or if you're just watching and reading articles and things like that, you think everything should be much, much faster. And of course, that's a reasonable desire for us as leaders to do that. But that fast velocity only comes after you build the capabilities. And that building of the capabilities comes with confusion, like enormous amounts of confusion. And confusion even more so because we as humans don't like to look dumb. So we think, oh, if I ask a dumb question, I'm going to look dumb. And so I don't ask it. And instead, I spend 9 hours trying to figure out what this AI can do, instead of the guy who knows how to prompt it could, in one sentence, in 30 seconds, get you exactly what you want. So the leader has to create this environment of forgiveness, environment of experimentation is okay, environment that errors are welcome, not in production, but on your desktop, in your sandbox. And once they do that, they will start to see that the humans themselves, they want to do this. They want to learn this. Nobody's out there saying, I don't want to learn AI. There are some people that are retiring. Aside from those guys, there are almost everybody that wants to be in the business is going to learn about this. You just have to create an environment where they can.
Thank you for that. Let's take a look at some of the questions from our comments, if we can pull those up. So David says, AI does not perform magic without a magician who can execute it, make it tangible. In that vein, do we really have magicians in the world who are prepared to bring out the magic behind AI? And is AI actually prepared to fulfill all its purposes?
Yeah, David, you should be on this panel with us. It's a fantastic question, because if you think about the quick 2 answers to this is, do those magicians exist? Absolutely. How do I know that? Well, because we have Gemini, OpenAI, Claude. There are lots of large language models that operate really well. So do some magicians exist? Yes. Now, the question, which is a far more important one, is the AI actually prepared to fulfill its purpose? The better question maybe to expand on that would be, are we as humans willing to ask the AI the right context and prompts that would help fulfill its purpose? It doesn't even know it has a purpose, other than a generative AI has one purpose, and that is to generate things. And so producing streams of words is currently its only, quote, purpose in life. Now, we can have philosophical discussions about whether or not it might become conscious one day, etc. But in a B2B, business-friendly, focused world, the answer is AI is absolutely fulfilling its purpose today when being asked to do the right thing with the, quote, right magicians, who are people who understand context, who know how to speak to the 2-year-old, as I was saying. So fantastic question. The answer is yes on both, in a qualified way.
And Daniela has said AI can be your best friend and not your enemy. Instead of being scared, we should embrace it and learn it and integrate it or potentiate our teams versus thinking it will replace us.
No, and I think, Daniela, you couldn't be more right. And that's why I recommend don't treat the AI as a SaaS tool on the side to do your knowledge management. Treat it as a colleague, onboard it as a colleague, train it as a colleague. You can't go to lunch with it, but you could treat it in that same vein to say that whatever I tell Ryan as a colleague, I will also tell my AI as a colleague. Why? Because just like Ryan, the AI has memory. Just like Ryan, when I give it a new problem 3 days from now, it's going to remember what I told it 3 days ago. So Daniela, you couldn't be more right. And if you do treat it as a friend, treat it as a colleague friend that you actually like working with and talking to and giving more information, and then you'll get more out on the other end.
Excellent. Thank you for those questions. We are right up at our time, and I want Shahid to give us one last takeaway. If you could leave a CTO or product leader with one simple to do this week to boost talent velocity without adding complexity, what would it be?
If you haven't already done so, and let's say you're a CTO who has minimal engineering skills that you still want to keep fresh, load it up in Cursor, Claude Code, Lovable, pick a tool and write yourself just even a simple function, right? Or a small website, redo your blog, do something where you can say, I started with a thought, explained it to an AI, and got some output, which I can then review and take as assets and artifacts through to a further process, a QA process, a DevOps process, etc. Because the number one problem with CTOs today is they sometimes don't have enough time to understand these tools in a visceral, like it in your bones way. If you don't know it viscerally in your bones, then everything that you tell to your staff is going to be surface level. And when they see that you are surface level, their confusion sometimes goes up. And sometimes they see that, Shahid's not really serious. He hasn't even tried this himself. He doesn't know how hard this is. He doesn't know that it's generating slop and I have to review it anyway. He doesn't know. Anytime you can prefix some leader telling you something is, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? That is troublesome. In another environment, if you had a large project that you were working on, you were brought in as a new CTO, yes, you will not know everything about that project, but you will try to learn the pieces. And that's what this AI part is, that you got to learn the tools so that you can give the proper examples. And you as the CTO have to be an IC before you ask everyone else to contribute.
Yeah, and I think also having a 10,000-foot view of your strategic talent needs, like AI is changing the skill mix. AI is changing, really who needs to be in those seats on your team to get the most out of it. And so I think it's important to also align, just take a step back, look at it from the top down and say, here's what's changed. Here's what we need going forward. And if you're not able to do that, work with great partners like Shahid or Lean Solutions Group to help you with those strategic needs. Well, thank you so much, Shahid, for the conversation today. I learned a lot. I hope everyone who watched also learned as much as I did. Thank you for sticking around with us. If you'd like to learn anything else about Lean Solutions Group, you can go to our website at www.leangroup.com, or you can also go to Shahid's website to learn more about him at www.shahidshah.com. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.